You're in a space dedicated to amazing stories that help you unwind before sleep. Don't forget to rate, as by the end of our tale, you'll be ready for a deep slumber. Close your eyes and let's dive into the past. Ancient Egypt is one of those civilizations that continues to astonish and intrigue. Thousands of years have passed, and archaeologists have explored numerous artifacts, yet Egypt still holds many secrets. That's what makes it special. When we think of Egypt, the pyramids come to mind first. These massive structures still impress with their grandeur and precision. Each stone weighs several tons, and the construction is so meticulously assembled that debates about their creation methods persist. There are official accounts and alternative theories, but no definitive answers exist. Another iconic figure in Egypt is the Sphinx, a majestic statue with a lion's body and a human face, standing in the desert for thousands of years. We know it was built in the Old Kingdom, but its age remains disputed. Some researchers believe it's much older than official sources indicate. Many legends also surround hidden tunnels and secret chambers beneath the Sphinx, which remain undiscovered. The topic of mummies is also hugely fascinating. Egyptians mastered the art of preserving bodies so skillfully that after thousands of years, we can see them nearly intact. However, the technology of mummification isn't fully understood. Rumors circulate about curses of pharaohs and mysterious deaths of archaeologists who explored the tombs. Hieroglyphs left by priests pose another mystery. Some have been deciphered, but many symbols and formulas remain subjects of debate. The Book of the Dead and the pyramid texts reveal ancient Egyptians' beliefs about the afterlife, yet many aspects remain unclear. There are also numerous enigmas related to religious cults and rituals. Priests possessed secret knowledge that wasn't shared with everyone. Ordinary people could participate in simple rituals, but true secrets were kept in temples and only partially reached us. Thus, the subject of priests and their influence continues to attract attention. Egypt remains relevant today as archaeologists keep making new discoveries. Modern technologies like pyramid scanning show that undiscovered rooms may still exist inside, indicating we're only on the brink of unraveling the mysteries. In this lecture, we'll explore the main mysteries of ancient Egypt. We'll discuss the pyramids and the Sphinx, mummies and curses, priests' texts and myths. We'll peek into temples, examine new finds, and ponder why Egypt remains a land of eternal enigmas. The Great Pyramid of Khufu on the Giza Plateau has stood for over 4,000 years and still raises many questions. Its dimensions impress even today. Its original height was nearly 146 meters, and for a long time, it was the tallest structure on the planet. The scale of construction is hard to fathom. Building it required over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing around 2 tons on average. Some stones used in special chambers could weigh over 50 tons. Despite such a massive amount of materials, the entire structure is aligned with remarkable precision. The pyramid's sides are nearly perfectly oriented to the cardinal directions, with angle differences of mere fractions of a degree, which is incredible considering the builders used only the simplest tools. The pyramid's base is leveled so that the height difference between corners is just a few centimeters, despite covering an area comparable to a large modern stadium. It's astonishing that such accuracy could be achieved without complex geodetic techniques. Even the internal corridors and chambers are crafted with remarkable care. Narrow passageways extend dozens of meters into the depths, all done without significant errors. This was an engineering feat of its time, unmatched in history. Looking at the pyramid inevitably raises the question, how did the ancient Egyptians build it? The official view of archaeologists is that stone was quarried and then transported to the construction site via specially constructed roads or even canals if the Nile was close by. The most common hypothesis involves the use of a long earth ramp. On this inclined embankment, stone blocks were lifted using wooden sledges and ropes, with water poured under the runners or logs laid down to reduce friction. This version seems plausible, but requires vast resources, thousands of people, mounds of earth, and many years of hard labor. There are other theories as well. Some scholars suggest that ramps might have been spiraled around the pyramid, saving space and using less earth, but there's currently no concrete archaeological evidence for such technology. Other theories involve simple levers and lifting devices. However, all these are based more on logical assumptions than on factual data. In addition to official theories, there are many alternative ones. For instance, there's the idea that Egyptians had secrets for creating a special liquid stone that allowed them to form blocks on site, pouring them into molds like concrete. This hypothesis explains the precise fitting of blocks together, but convincing evidence for such technology has yet to be found. An even bolder theory suggests that ancient Egyptians may have had technologies that have been lost or are inaccessible to us. In that case, the pyramid might not just be a tomb, but a mysterious object created using knowledge that seems impossible for that era. Some even go further, linking the construction of the pyramids to the intervention of forces beyond our conventional history. These hypotheses are rarely taken seriously by scholars, yet they show how profoundly the Great Pyramid of Khufu stirs the imagination. Ultimately, we have a unique structure that not only impresses with its majesty, but also poses questions that still lack definitive answers. When it comes to the Pyramid of Khufu, many envision only its exterior, a massive stone structure with perfectly flat faces. However, a peek inside reveals that secrets lie hidden beyond the surface. The internal layout of the structure is so complex and unusual that it remains astonishing. The pyramid includes several corridors and chambers. The entrance to Khufu's pyramid isn't at the base, as one might expect. About 15 meters up, there's a long corridor leading down into the earth. This corridor ends in what's called the subterranean chamber, carved into the rock. The purpose of this room remains unclear. No sarcophagus or signs of a tomb have been found in it. Some researchers believe this was the original tomb, which was later abandoned, while others believe it's part of a more complex structure. There's also an ascending corridor that leads into the pyramid, granting access to two key chambers, the king's and the queen's. The king's chamber is built from massive granite blocks, so heavy that transporting them from the distant quarry in Aswan raises questions. Inside, there's a huge empty stone sarcophagus, which contains neither a mummy nor funerary items. Surprisingly, the Queen's chamber wasn't intended for the Queen's burial, as its walls are made of limestone and it lacks a sarcophagus. However, the most intriguing aspect of this room is the narrow shafts that lead deep into the stone. They measure just 20 centimeters wide and aren't meant for humans. Initially, they were thought to be ventilation channels, but later it was discovered they don't reach the surface and can't serve that function. In the 1990s, a small robot was sent into one of the shafts, managing to traverse dozens of meters before hitting a stone slab with two metal elements, resembling handles or loops. This created the impression of a small door. In the early 2000s, the robot drilled a hole in the slab and discovered another empty space and a second slab behind it. Since then, further research has been halted, leaving what these closed passages conceal unclear. Furthermore, the shafts align with specific stars. Studies indicated that one shaft in the king's chamber points to Orion's belt, linked in Egyptian mythology to the god Osiris. Another points to Sirius, a star associated with the goddess Isis. Thus, these channels could symbolically connect the pharaoh to the deities. This suggests the pyramid's internal structure had both practical and religious significance. Such aspects lead one to ponder whether the pyramid represented something more than just a tomb. Proponents of the theory that the Great Pyramid of Khufu had an energy purpose argue its shape and proportions weren't accidental. The pyramid is precisely oriented to the cardinal directions. The height and length of its base relate to the number Pa and Earth's proportions. These coincidences are so precise that they create a sense of intentional design. Some scholars propose the pyramid might have functioned as a generator or energy capacitor, citing the ascending gallery's acoustic features, electromagnetic anomalies near the peak, and even traces of crystals in the granite blocks. There's a belief that specific resonant vibrations could have been created inside the pyramid, utilized in rituals. According to this theory, the pyramid served not as a tomb, but as a device facilitating the pharaoh's soul's transition to the afterlife. Critics point to the lack of direct evidence of its operation as an energy machine. However, the question itself implies that the construction's accuracy and unusual layout details demand explanation from both practical and symbolic perspectives. Egyptians might have imbued the pyramid with numerous meanings. To them, the pyramid's shape symbolized sun rays converging at a single point, reflecting the connection between the earthly ruler and the deity Ra. The star-aligned shafts and internal chambers of the pyramid might have been part of a ritual system, aiding the deceased pharaoh's soul in connecting with the realm of the gods. Today, thousands of years later, we can only speculate. But one can state with certainty, the internal structure of the Great Pyramid of Khufu and its mysterious shafts weren't random. They gave the impression that the builders pursued a goal we still haven't fully grasped. This transforms the pyramid into something beyond just an architectural marvel and leaves it a mystery humanity will ponder for many years to come. Focusing solely on the Great Pyramid of Khufu might overlook a broader context. After all, the Great Pyramid didn't emerge suddenly. It followed a long path of exploration and experimentation. In earlier structures, we see how Egyptian architecture evolved. The pyramids of Djoser and Meidum might seem less imposing compared to the giant Khufu, but they contain equally important mysteries that help understand the origins of the pyramid concept and how builders arrived at its classic form. The Pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara, dating back to 2670 BCE, is considered Egypt's first true pyramid. Prior to this, pharaohs were buried in low rectangular tombs made of mud brick. Architect Imhotep decided to change this tradition, scaling up construction and creating one step above another, gradually reducing the sizes of the upper levels. Thus, the stepped form emerged, rising over 60 meters high. For its time, it was a colossal structure without precedent. The Djoser complex wasn't limited to just the pyramid. It included palaces, temples, courtyards, and a surrounding wall nearly 1.5 kilometers long. Many elements had symbolic significance, buildings with complex doors and imitations of living spaces that weren't actually used. None of this served a practical purpose, but reflected Egyptians' beliefs about the afterlife and the king's power. The complex functioned as a model of the cosmos, with the pyramid at its center. The underground part of the structure is particularly interesting. Beneath the pyramid lies a network of corridors and halls extending over 5 kilometers. Some of these rooms are adorned with blue faience tiles, creating an impression of luxurious decor. Thousands of stone vessels bearing the names of earlier dynasty rulers were found here. They may have been intentionally placed to link Djoser with ancestors and emphasize the continuity of power. However, the reason for such an extensive system of underground chambers remains unclear. Some scholars believe this was a repository for funerary inventory, while others see them as a symbolic afterlife palace where the pharaoh continued to exist after death. In any case, the underground labyrinth remains one of the complex's most enigmatic features. The main question when viewing the Pyramid of Djoser is where the Egyptians acquired such skills. Until then, they had built with brick, but here we see a monumental stone structure with carefully crafted blocks. It creates the impression that even in their first attempt, they attained an astonishingly high level. We don't see a gradual accumulation of experience. Instead, we encounter a fully developed school of stone architecture. This sharp leap leaves its origin unclear. If Djoser marked the beginning of the pyramid tradition, His legacy continues to intrigue researchers. The Meidum Pyramid represents the next stage in architectural development. Today, it appears as a massive structure with collapsed slopes, which led to its nickname, the Bent Pyramid. Scholars still debate the timing of its collapse. According to one version, the casing may have collapsed during construction and the pyramid was never completed. According to another version, the collapse occurred centuries later when it suffered erosion or was used as a quarries. This pyramid holds special significance because it's believed to be the first attempt to transition from a stepped design to a smooth one. The inner core still shows traces of a stepped shape, but the upper part was clad to create a smooth slope. This was a bold move that later became the standard for all classical pyramids. The Meidum Pyramid can be seen as the first significant experiment in achieving a true form. Equally intriguing is the internal structure of this monument. It features one of the earliest above-ground burial chambers, topped with a corbel vault. This design helped reduce the load on the ceiling and represented a technical breakthrough of the time. A similar approach was later used in the Pyramid of Khufu, but for Meidum, it was one of the first attempts, and the chamber appears as a transitional phase in architectural development. There's another interesting aspect to consider. Unlike other pyramids, such as those at Giza and Saqqara, there's almost no evidence of active life around the Meidum Pyramid. Typically, royal tombs attract settlements of nobility, worker quarters, and artisan cemeteries. But this isn't observed here. This suggests that the pyramid might have been abandoned in ancient times or lost its significance for unknown reasons. We usually regard the pyramids as the pinnacle of ancient Egyptian engineering, but nearby lies another mysterious structure, the Great Sphinx. While the pyramids impress with their size and precision, the Sphinx resembles a riddle carved in stone. Its form seems to urge viewers to ponder its origin, age, and the meaning its creators intended. The statue sits on the eastern edge of the Giza Plateau, facing east toward the rising sun. It stretches nearly 73 meters long and stands almost 20 meters high. This makes it one of the largest monolithic statues in the world, carved not from blocks like the pyramids, but directly from limestone. The Sphinx depicts a reclining lion with a human head, symbolizing the unity of animal strength and the ruler's intellect. In ancient Egyptian culture, this combination embodied the power that connected the earthly and the divine. Official Egyptology dates the Sphinx's creation to the reign of Pharaoh Khafre around the mid-20th century BCE. This aligns with its position directly in front of the road leading to Khafre's temple complex. It seems reasonable to suggest that this pharaoh commissioned its construction. Moreover, the remaining fragments of the Sphinx's face display similarities to other statues of Khafre, which serves as a key argument for the traditional dating. However, a so-called age problem arises. The Sphinx's surface shows signs of erosion that are hard to explain solely by wind and sand. Its body, especially the enclosing wall, features vertical and wave-like grooves resembling markings left by rainwater flowing over soft stone. Geologist Robert Schoch noted this in the late 20th century. He proposed the hypothesis that the Sphinx was carved much earlier, during a time when Egypt experienced abundant rainfall. Such a climate might have existed thousands of years before the official dating, possibly no later than the 8th or even 10th millennium BCE. If true, the Sphinx predates the pyramids and belongs to a completely different era, radically altering our understanding of Egypt's history. In this case, its creators lived in a prehistoric period, about which we have almost no written records. This implies that there was a culture capable of such grand projects, but no other traces remain apart from this statue. Critics of this theory present their arguments. They point out that the limestone of Giza has a heterogeneous structure. Some layers are denser, while others are softer. Wind and sand could cause varying degrees of erosion, creating the impression of vertical grooves. Additionally, Temperature fluctuations between day and night might have contributed to surface deterioration. Proponents of the traditional dating remind us that temples and roads surround the Sphinx, undoubtedly dating back to Khafre's reign. It's logical to assume that all these structures were created as part of a single project. Nonetheless, the question remains open. The erosional marks are indeed unusual, and many geologists confirm they resemble signs of water impact. However, the archaeological context points to a later period. It's worth noting that the Sphinx is not just a statue, but a monument surrounded by numerous mysteries. Even if it does indeed belong to Khafre's time, questions linger. Why was such a gigantic figure created, which took many months or even years of work? Why was it chosen to take the form of a lion with a human face? And why didn't other similar sphinxes appear in Egypt if this idea was so important? There are no convincing answers to these questions yet. Beyond issues of age and erosion of the Sphinx, another layer of mystery surrounds this statue. This includes legends, secret chambers, and underground passages. These myths have existed for a long time, based on both ancient traditions and the impression the Sphinx creates. Medieval Arab chronicles mention hidden doors leading deep beneath the statue, where treasures and knowledge of the ancients supposedly lie. In the 10th century, as European explorers began to study Egypt more actively, rumors about secret rooms intensified. Tourists and locals claimed that the Sphinx contained voids with ancient manuscripts and artifacts. In the 20th century, this topic gained new traction. Publications began to appear about a so-called Hall of Records, which, according to some versions, is a library preserving knowledge about ancient civilizations. Proponents of this theory link it to myths about the lost Atlantis, suggesting that the secret to the origins of Egyptian culture might lie beneath the Sphinx. Such ideas are not only found among esotericists, but also among some researchers who note oddities in the arrangement of voids and cracks around the statue. Modern studies have indeed shown that underground cavities exist near the Sphinx. In the late 20th century, ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys detected zones of lower density that could be voids. However, archaeologists approach this data with caution. Experts believe these are natural fractures and geological formations, not man-made structures. Over 10 years of excavation have not yielded any evidence of entrances or signs of artificial corridors. Yet the very possibility that something unidentified lies beneath the Sphinx continues to spark interest and creates an air of mystery around this monument. If the Sphinx remains a silent guardian of the desert and a symbol of the unresolved, other great statues of ancient Egypt draw attention not only for their appearance but for their behavior. The most famous example is the Colossi of Memnon. These two massive quartzite sandstone sculptures depict Pharaoh Amenhotep III. Standing 18 meters tall, they were located at the entrance to a magnificent funerary temple, once considered one of the grandest in Thebes. Today, little remains of the temple, but the colossi still rise above the plain. These statues became famous due to an unusual phenomenon. Ancient Greeks and Romans claimed that at dawn, the northern colossus emitted sounds, quiet yet distinct, resembling a chime or hum. It was believed the statue sang or greeted the morning sun. The Greeks associated this phenomenon with Memnon, a hero and son of the goddess Eos, who died at Troy. Thus, the colossi became known as Memnons, and the sounds were thought to be him speaking to his mother each morning. This occurrence became so popular that pilgrims flocked to the statues, leaving inscriptions at their base, noting the date and describing the sounds heard. These records have survived to this day and provide valuable evidence of the phenomenon's widespread and regular nature. Modern scholars offer a more pragmatic explanation. After a powerful earthquake in the 3rd century BCE, the northern colossus developed cracks. When the stone heated in the sun at dawn, physical processes involving air movement and moisture evaporation occurred within the cracks. This created an acoustic effect, perceived by ancient people as a voice. Later, during the Roman era, the statue was restored, the cracks repaired, and the sounds disappeared. Inscriptions from a later time indicate that the singing ceased. Today, it's crucial for us to understand not just the explanation of this phenomenon, but also how ancient people perceived it. The colossi weren't merely statues. Their size, placement, and particularly the unusual sounds were seen as a miracle, a symbol of divine presence. Memnon's colossi became a pilgrimage site and the subject of countless legends that spread throughout the ancient world. Both the Sphinx and Memnon's colossi exhibit a common trait of Egyptian monuments. They were never just stone figures. They represented symbols, signs, and manifestations of the supernatural. Discussing the pyramids and the Sphinx, we gradually transition to another vital aspect of Egyptian civilization, its writing and texts. Without them, understanding how Egyptians perceived the world, the gods, and their fate after death isn't possible. Egyptian writing is known to us as a system of hieroglyphs. At first glance, they're just beautiful signs shaped like figures of people, animals, plants, and objects. However, for the Egyptians, it was much more than mere symbols. Each sign held its power, and each text not only served a practical function, but also possessed sacred significance. Hieroglyphs were read differently. Some conveyed sounds, others represented entire words, while some clarified meanings. For Egyptians, these weren't letters or symbols, but living images. When a scribe or priest recorded the name of a person or deity, they essentially created their presence on a wall, papyrus, or sarcophagus. It was believed that a written name continued to exist forever and protected its bearer. Thus, erasing a name from a wall equated to erasing the memory of a person. That's why enemy names were scraped or erased, while pharaohs' names were enclosed in oval frames, cartouches, symbolically protecting them from harm. Even in simple tombs, inscriptions with double meanings appear. They recount the deceased's life, family, and achievements, while also acting as a magical formula helping the soul attain eternal existence. It's no coincidence that Egyptians used red paint for important words. This color emphasized their power and special status. For them, text wasn't just information, it was an act possessing power in the afterlife. Special significance belongs to the so-called pyramid texts. These are the oldest religious texts known to humanity. They emerged during the Old Kingdom around the 20th century BCE. These inscriptions were carved on the walls of the inner chambers of royal pyramids, starting with Pharaoh Unas's pyramid in Saqqara. The pyramid texts are a collection of spells, prayers, and magical formulas aimed at ensuring the pharaoh's successful transition to the afterlife. They detail how the king's soul must undergo trials, ascend to the heavens, and unite with the gods. Some formulas send him to the sun so he can eternally sail through the sky beside the god Ra, while others link his fate with Osiris, the god of death and rebirth. They describe the path the soul must tread, facing obstacles and enemies, with each spell acting as a key unlocking the way forward. The style of these texts was unique. They often repeated the same phrases because for Egyptians, repetition intensified the effect. The texts contain imagery that seems strange. For example, the king absorbs the powers of the gods or devours their hearts. This isn't brutality in a literal sense, but a figurative expression of the pharaoh embracing all divine power and becoming part of eternity. It's essential to understand that the pyramid texts weren't merely inscriptions, but part of an entire ritual. They were placed in various locations, on chamber walls, ceilings, and corridors. The positioning of the text mattered. Ceilings were often adorned with star images, and alongside the written formulas they created a symbolic sky the soul was meant to ascend. For us, these texts represent immense value, as they are not only the oldest religious compositions, but also a crucial source of knowledge about Egyptians' beliefs. Yet even today, their content isn't always clear. The language of the texts is very ancient, and many words are found only in them, making precise translation challenging. Rituals likely included movements, scents of incense, and music, elements absent from the text and understood only by the priests. Thus, researchers can read these texts, but a sense of mystery remains. The pyramid texts laid the foundation for everything that followed. They evolved into the coffin texts, which were written not only for pharaohs but also for the nobility, and later they were adapted into the so-called Book of the Dead, a collection of spells copied onto papyrus and placed in the tomb with the deceased. Nevertheless, the pyramid texts initiated a tradition that significantly shaped Egyptians' worldview. After the emergence of the pyramid and coffin texts, a new collection of afterlife formulas arose in Egyptian culture, known today as the Book of the Dead. For ancient Egyptians, this title didn't carry the meaning we associate with it. It was a type of spellbook meant to assist the soul in its journey to the afterlife. This ritual scroll was crafted on papyrus and placed in the tomb with the deceased. Its purpose was to provide the soul with detailed instructions for its journey after death. The essence was simple. The afterlife wasn't a realm of rest, but a long and complex path. The soul needed to overcome numerous gates, meet with gods, and undergo their judgment. Each obstacle required knowledge of specific formulas. Thus, the texts of the Book of the Dead served as a kind of navigator. One key part of this book was the Confession of Negations, or the Confession of Purity, where the soul declared to the gods, "I didn't steal, I didn't kill, I didn't deceive." The list of sins was quite lengthy, consisting of several dozen items. In this way, the deceased demonstrated their righteousness. Next came the famous judgment of Osiris. The heart was weighed on scales against the feather of the goddess Maat, symbolizing truth and justice. If the heart was heavy with sins, the soul faced destruction. If it was light, the person gained access to eternity. The Book of the Dead was both feared and revered. People feared it because it showed how many trials lay ahead. It reminded every Egyptian that even after death, they would face judgment and that nothing could be hidden from the gods. At the same time, it was respected because it provided hope. With the right knowledge and formulas, one could overcome all difficulties. For the deceased's family, such a scroll wasn't a luxury, but an important investment in their relative's future. That's why we find numerous books of the dead written on papyrus, each differing slightly. Texts were chosen based on what spells were deemed necessary. However, even detailed instructions didn't contain all the knowledge. Priests intentionally left some rituals and formulas for oral transmission only. They believed not everything could be entrusted to writing. Some secret practices were meant to remain within a close circle of initiates. This created a barrier between priests and ordinary people. Even if someone had the papyrus and knew the texts, there remained unwritten secrets known only to temple servants. This added a special depth to the religion and upheld the authority of the priesthood. For us today, this is a significant loss. We see the texts, but we sense something is missing, as if the key is hidden. There's another mystery. Even among the texts that have survived, there are symbols we don't fully understand. Many hieroglyphs were deciphered following the discovery of a specific stone, but religious scrolls contain rare signs and images whose meanings still spark debate. Sometimes they depict strange beings, a mix of human and animal forms, absent from the mythology we know from other sources. Other times, these are symbols appearing only once with no analogues. They were likely obvious to Egyptians, as they belonged to their system of beliefs. However, we find them enigmatic. Scholars propose tentative interpretations, but there's no absolute certainty. Thus, the Book of the Dead represents not just a religious text, but an entire layer of Egyptian worldview. It shows that death was viewed not as an end, but as a transition. Yet this transition was fraught with dangers. Egyptians feared this path, but they believed the right words and actions would help them overcome it. As we read these texts today, we also see another layer of unspoken truths, unwritten secrets that remain solely in the mouths of priests. The rare and obscure symbols remind us that we don't possess the entire system of knowledge the ancients had. We've already touched on the topics of pyramids, the Sphinx, and texts that accompanied Egyptians in the afterlife. However, this closely relates to yet another aspect of Egyptian culture that likely impresses people the most even today. It's about mummies and how Egyptians managed to preserve the bodies of the deceased. Mummies became the most recognizable part of ancient Egypt's image, and legends of curses, mysteries, and secrets emerged around them. The art of mummification in Egypt remains a subject of study. It's known that the primary goal was to preserve the body for eternity. Egyptians believed the soul had to return to the body from time to time. If the body decayed, the person's existence in the afterlife was disrupted. Therefore, the body was treated to endure for centuries. The mummification process included several stages. First, internal organs were removed, often placed in special vessels, each with its symbolic meaning and linked to a specific guardian deity. The brain was extracted through the nose using specialized tools. The body was then washed and treated with natron, a natural salt that dehydrated the tissues. After this, it was wrapped in linen bandages, with amulets and figurines placed between layers to protect the deceased. All of this was accompanied by rituals, prayers, and the recitation of spells. It might seem that scholars have long unraveled this process, but careful study reveals it's not so straightforward. Some mummies have survived so perfectly that modern specialists can't explain how this was accomplished. Sometimes the skin appears nearly untouched, and hair and eyelashes retain their natural look even after thousands of years. In certain cases, resins and substances of unknown origin have been found on the fabrics. This suggests that Egyptians used secret mixtures and technologies that haven't been preserved in written sources. Modern attempts to reproduce the mummification process yield results, but aren't always as impressive. We grasp the general principle, but lack all the nuances. The topic of so-called foreign mummies is equally mysterious. Sometimes archaeologists discover bodies in tombs that clearly shouldn't be there. These might be burials of individuals that don't match the time, era, or status for which the space was intended. In some tombs, rather than finding a king or noble, they uncover more modest burials, sometimes even showing signs of hasty mummification. Scholars speculate that such substitutions might have occurred during troubled times when old tombs were reused. Perhaps these were remnants of looting or attempts to secretly bury a body to protect it from enemies. There are also stranger cases. For instance, some burial sites contain mummies of unclear origin. The bones and bodies show that these are people of different appearances or unusual origins for Egypt. In some cases, mummies are found with mummification rituals performed differently than traditionally done. This raises questions that such bodies might have belonged to people from other countries, or even representatives of various cultures who ended up in Egypt. Thus, mummies are not only evidence of Egyptian mastery, but also a source of questions that lack clear answers. Egyptians undoubtedly possessed methods for preserving bodies that we don't fully understand. And foreign mummies remind us that the history of ancient Egypt was far more diverse and complex than it might initially seem. When we talk about mummies, we often envision the bodies of pharaohs and nobility wrapped in linen. However, archaeological finds show that the art of mummification in Egypt was used much more broadly than commonly believed. Egyptians mummified not only monarchs but also infants, animals, and employed unusual methods that to this day astonish scholars. They are particularly interested in the mummies of children and infants. Egyptians believed even the smallest should have the chance to transition to the afterlife, just like adults. Sometimes they mummified infants with the same care as kings, using resins, layered fabrics, and amulets. There are cases where small bodies were placed in luxurious sarcophagi, but there were also hurried, spontaneous mummifications, as if death caught parents off guard. These findings raise questions. Were such burials always expressions of care, Or did they sometimes involve sacrifices to gods demanding particular offerings? There's no definitive answer to this question. Equally noteworthy is the practice of mummifying animals. Egyptians viewed many animals as embodiments of gods. For instance, cats were associated with the goddess Bastet, falcons with Horus, and crocodiles with the god Sobek. Consequently, thousands of mummified animals have been found in Egypt, placed in temples as offerings, sold to pilgrims, or buried in whole necropolises. In Saqqara, galleries containing hundreds of mummies of dogs, cats, and bulls were discovered. This demonstrates how deeply religion permeated Egyptian life and how they physically expressed their faith. Recent finds include mummies with golden tongues. Archaeologists uncovered several bodies where a thin gold plate replaced the tongue. It was believed this allowed the deceased to speak in the afterlife and communicate with Osiris and other deities. Gold symbolized eternity and indestructibility, so replacing a tongue with gold indicated high status or the family's hope for the deceased's well-being in the next world. This practice was rare and used only in exceptional cases, adding to its mystery. Among the many stories about mummies, there's an unusual legend of the so-called singing mummies. Even in ancient times and later in Arab traditions, tales emerged claiming some mummies made sounds. Sometimes a quiet whisper was mentioned, and other times sounds resembling singing or moaning. Modern researchers attribute such phenomena to natural causes. For instance, when tombs are opened, changes in temperature and humidity could cause air to pass through dry tissues or open mouth cavities, creating sounds. To the ancients, this seemed like a miracle confirming that the dead continued to communicate. The legend of singing mummies became firmly established, contributing to Egypt's image as a land of mysteries. Despite the few real confirmations of such cases, the existence of these stories over centuries shows how profoundly mummies impress people's imaginations. They were seen not only as preserved bodies, but also as vessels of power that didn't fade even after death. The theme of the pharaoh's curse became one of the most famous legends about ancient Egypt. It seemingly arose around mummies, tombs, and excavations, though it's based on real events. This tale gained prominence after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. An English archaeologist and his team uncovered the burial place of the young pharaoh from the dynasty that ruled in the 10th century BCE. Until then, most royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings had been looted in antiquity. However, the burial of Tutankhamun remained nearly untouched, and this find became a worldwide sensation. The golden burial mask, sarcophagi, and thousands of items showcased how richly and carefully even a young ruler was prepared for the afterlife. However, shortly after the discovery, events began that fueled the myth of the curse. The lord financing the expedition soon died from blood poisoning, caused by what seemed to be a minor mosquito bite. His death occurred suddenly, right in Cairo. Newspapers picked up the story and quickly linked it to the pharaoh's wrath. To amplify the effect, journalists claimed a warning inscription had been found on the tomb walls. "Death will come to he who disturbs the king's rest." In reality, no such inscription existed, but the legend proved so convincing that people began to believe it. Attention to the curse only grew, with reports of other strange deaths emerging. One researcher died of a heart attack, another perished in a car accident, and a third suddenly fell ill. The press created an image of a chain of misfortunes striking those connected to the tomb's discovery. It was particularly striking because many of them were relatively young and led active lives. This theme became too tempting for newspapers and society. Ancient pharaohs protecting their rest through the ages. Egypt, with its pyramids and mummies, has always been associated with mysticism, and now this mystique gained real proof. Soon the phrase "Pharaoh's curse" became popular worldwide. However, upon closer examination of the facts, the picture appears different. The chief archaeologist of the expedition lived another 17 years after the tomb's discovery and died at the age of 64 from a common illness. Many team members lived to an old age. Thus, the idea of a death chain was largely exaggerated and fueled by journalists. Nevertheless, the question remains why the death of the Lord and a few other cases became the foundation of the legend. Scholars have proposed several explanations. The first relates to microbiology. Mold spores and bacteria could survive in tombs sealed for thousands of years. If inhaled by researchers, they could cause severe infections. Today, it's known that dangerous spores were indeed found in some burial places. At the beginning of the 20th century, medicine lacked antibiotics, and even a mild infection could become fatal. The second explanation pertains to chemistry. Resins and substances used in mummification could over time lead to. Some researchers suggest priests might have intentionally used toxic substances in tombs to deter potential robbers. Even if this approach wasn't conscious, accumulated toxic substances in a confined space might negatively affect researchers' health. There's also a third version, more psychological in nature. Rumors of the curse became so widespread that people started linking any ailments to the excavations. Stress and suggestion could have had as much influence as actual diseases. Those who believed in the possibility of punishment were more likely to suffer from ailments or feel worse. Thus, the phenomenon of the pharaoh's curse can be explained by a combination of various factors, including real illnesses, random misfortunes, and the power of imagination. Despite scientific explanations, the myth became stronger than the facts. It entered global culture and became one of the symbols of ancient Egypt's mysteries. Today, when travelers visit the Valley of the Kings, they still remember the story of Tutankhamun. For many, it's not just an archaeological study, but also the romance of a mystery. Although we understand the curse was likely a myth, it made mummies and tombs even more alluring, and the Egyptian gods enigmatic. Engaging with Egyptian mythology, we enter into the essence of their worldview. Pyramids, mummies, and sacred texts are merely outward expressions of a belief system that explained the world to Egyptians and their place in it. The pantheon of Egyptian gods was vast and diverse. Local deities existed in various regions of the country. Each city had its own shrines and traditions, but gradually, a common list of universally revered gods emerged. The chief among them was the sun god Ra. Egyptians believed he rose every morning from the underworld on his boat and sailed across the sky, granting light and life to people. At night, Ra traveled to the afterlife, where he battled the monster Apophis, symbolizing chaos and darkness. Each sunrise was seen as proof of Ra's victory over the forces of darkness. The god Horus embodied royal power and was depicted as a falcon, or a man with a falcon's head. Egyptians believed every pharaoh was the earthly incarnation of Horus, which gave the king's authority a sacred significance. The goddess Isis held a special place in the pantheon, symbolizing motherhood, care, and magical power. Her cult became so popular that it spread far beyond Egypt and persisted even in the Roman Empire. She was often depicted with a throne on her head or holding the infant Horus in her arms, embodying devotion and love. It was Isis who gathered the body parts of Osiris to bring him back to life. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, was the patron of mummification and the guide of souls to the afterlife. He oversaw the weighing of hearts and ensured proper burial rites, granting the soul a chance at eternal existence. The myth of Osiris significantly influenced concepts of death and the afterlife, reflecting key ideas in Egyptian religion. According to legend, Osiris was a wise ruler who taught people agriculture and crafts. His envious brother Seth plotted against him, offering a chest perfectly sized for Osiris. When Osiris lay in it, Seth closed the lid, sealed it with lead, and threw it into the Nile. Isis, his wife and sister, searched for her husband and found his body, but Seth, upon learning of this, chopped it into pieces and scattered them across the land. Isis, along with Nephthys, gathered all the parts and, with magic, temporarily revived Osiris. From their union, Horus was born, who later avenged Seth and became the new king. This myth operates on multiple levels. On one level, it tells of the brother's struggle and a wife's loyalty. However, on a deeper level, it symbolizes the cycle of life. The dismembered and reassembled body of Osiris represents the grain that dies in the ground but then sprouts and is reborn. Egyptians, living in a land dependent on the Nile's floods, saw a direct parallel with natural processes. Death and rebirth were part of the eternal cycle. Osiris became a symbol of hope, and every Egyptian believed they would become a new Osiris after death. Texts mention formulas indicating that the deceased follow the same path. They die, but then are reborn in the afterlife for eternal life. The myth of Osiris also explained the importance of mummification and rituals. By preserving the body, Egyptians repeated Isis's act of gathering Osiris's parts. Incantations and texts in tombs assisted the soul in undergoing trials, just as magic and deities did for Osiris. The judgment of Osiris, where the heart was weighed, solidified the notion of justice. In the afterlife, it mattered not only to believe, but also how one lived their life. Thus, the pantheon of Egyptian gods wasn't just a collection of images. It represented a coordinate system through which Egyptians understood life and death. Ra explained the change of day and night, Anubis the burial rites, Isis the power of care and magic, and Osiris became the symbol of hope for eternity. The myth of Osiris formed the foundation of Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife, with Isis and Horus taking central roles in Egyptian religion. Their cult became a powerful force, and Isis was seen as the ideal image of a wife and mother, caring for all in need. Temples to Isis were built across the country, with the most famous located on Philae Island in the Nile's upper reaches. Even when Egypt became part of the Roman Empire, the cult of Isis continued to exist, as Roman emperors understood its significance to the people. Isis became a symbol of maternal strength, caring for all who needed help. Royal authority in Egypt was symbolically represented as a falcon, embodying strength and dominance. Every pharaoh was seen as the earthly representative of the god Horus, reflected in both his crown and titles. For Egyptians, this meant that a monarch's power extended beyond mere political aspects, having sacred significance as well. The pharaoh acted as a mediator between deities and people. The mythological struggle between Horus and Seth symbolized the eternal conflict between order and chaos. Seth, the brother of Osiris, was associated with destruction and barren lands, while Horus represented the rightful heir and protector of the country. This struggle had both mythological and symbolic dimensions. When Egypt faced dangers, they interpreted them as manifestations of Seth, while the pharaoh's success was seen as a triumph of Horus. Equally significant was Anubis, whose veneration was linked to the mummification process. The image of the jackal was no accident, as these animals often appeared at the desert's borders where burials took place. This created in Egyptians a sense of a sacred and ominous sign. They believed the jackal could connect them to the afterlife. In the form of Anubis, this predator became a protector rather than an enemy. According to myths, he helped Isis in the mummification of Osiris, and the priests involved in embalming considered themselves continuers of his work. Every step they took mirrored the actions of the god, cleansing the body, treating it with salt, wrapping it in linen. Anubis was often depicted leaning over a body lying on a funeral bed. His black jackal head symbolized both death and eternal existence, as black was associated with the fertile land of the Nile and rebirth. Anubis accompanied the souls of the deceased to the afterlife, leading them to the scales where the heart was weighed against the feather of the goddess Mad. Thus, he was not just the guardian of the body, but also a guide for souls in the afterlife. Egyptians believed that without Anubis, a soul couldn't pass through the judgment of Osiris. The mystery of Anubis's cult lies in the fact that many aspects of his rituals remain unclear. A significant portion of knowledge was passed down orally, and many secret practices remained hidden. However, Available sources show that this god's role was central, as he connected the world of the living and the dead, ensuring the proper transition, which meant eternal life. Therefore, Horus and Anubis embodied hope and justice, while Anubis represented order and protection. These images demonstrate that Egyptian religion wasn't merely a system of deities, but also a complex web of meanings where each myth and ritual directly impacted people's lives. The priests of ancient Egypt weren't just religious leaders. They formed an elite group with knowledge and power comparable to royal authority. Their activities shrouded in secrecy, many of their actions remained incomprehensible to ordinary people. Each day in the temple began with priests awakening the statue of a god. For Egyptians, the statue didn't simply symbolize a deity. They believed it was the vessel for the god's spirit. In the morning, priests washed the statue, anointed it with oils, dressed it in clean fabrics, and adorned it with jewels, treating it as a living being. Egyptians truly believed the statue required care. However, these rituals remained inaccessible to the general populace. Ordinary Egyptians could visit the temple, leave offerings, and participate in processions, but access to the sanctuary housing the statue was forbidden. Only priests, after undergoing purification rituals, could enter, creating an aura of mystery. People knew significant events occurred inside, yet the specifics remained hidden by the priests. The priests' knowledge extended beyond rituals. They mastered astronomy, determined important dates, and synchronized festivals with the movements of sunlight and stars. They practiced medicine and knew various healing methods, blending practical techniques with magical incantations. They were also the guardians of texts documenting history, economic records, and religious formulas. However, the most valuable information remained oral, passed down solely from teacher to student. These secrets weren't entrusted to writing, as it was believed that written words could fall into the wrong hands, disrupting the order. Thus, key secrets lived on in the memories of the priests. Egyptian temples weren't just buildings, they acted as models of the universe. The massive temple at Karnak exemplifies this. When a person entered, it felt like they journeyed through the creation of the world. The enormous columns of the hypostyle hall symbolized the reeds of the primordial waters, from which, according to myth, the first mound emerged. The ceilings, painted with stars, represented the sky, while the walls depicted myths about gods and pharaohs. Everything was arranged to make the visitor feel part of a cosmos where chaos gradually yielded to order. Luxor Temple emphasized the idea of royal power. Here, the festivals of the pharaoh's rebirth took place, where he united with the image of a deity, affirming his legitimacy. Every relief and inscription highlighted that the pharaoh's power wasn't just a political reality, but a sacred gift. Those who participated in these celebrations only saw the external aspects: processions, music, sacrifices. The inner workings of the rituals in the sanctuaries remained closed off. There, a sacred reboot of power occurred. The hidden meanings of temples are particularly evident in their orientation. Many were constructed so that their exit aligned with the sunrise on specific days of the year, usually during festivals associated with a particular deity. When sunlight streamed into the sanctuary and illuminated the statue at a certain moment, it was seen as the presence of the deity. For ancient people, this served as proof that gods indeed walked among them. Thus, priests weren't just ritual performers. They acted as custodians of knowledge and intermediaries between humans and gods. Their rituals, close to most, fostered a sense of mystery and sacred power. The temples where they served were not merely cult structures, but models of the universe, where every column, inscription, and ray of light held special significance. Consequently, Egypt was perceived as a land where the realms of people and gods constantly intersected, with priests governing that boundary. There's a temptation to suggest that Egyptians held unique knowledge that has since vanished. One of the most famous legends is the story of the Hall of Knowledge, believed to be located under the pose of the Sphinx. It's said to house a library of ancient texts created before historical civilizations emerged, possibly even by Atlanteans. This idea was seized by esoteric writers of the 19th and 20th centuries, rapidly gaining popularity. They believed this hall contained the true history of humanity and keys to lost knowledge. Modern research has indeed confirmed the existence of voids beneath the Sphinx. In the late 20th century, ground-penetrating radar and seismic studies identified areas differing in density from the surrounding soil. Some interpreted this as evidence of underground chambers. However, Egyptian archaeologists offered a more cautious explanation. They argued these were natural cavities and cracks in the limestone rather than human-made holes. Excavations in these areas have yet to occur, leaving the question open. Nevertheless, the presence of hidden voids near the Sphinx only fuels interest in the legend. Beyond rumors of the Hall of Knowledge, there are real artifacts that spark debate. The most famous is the relief in the Hathor Temple at Dendera. It features figures holding strange objects resembling elongated oval vessels or lamps. A serpent emerges from these forms, stretching outward. Some researchers see this as a religious symbol, depicting a cosmic serpent contained within an egg, or a symbol of the birth of light. However, proponents of alternative theories label this relief the Dendera lamp, arguing it portrays an electric device. Why electric? Because its shape resembles a glass bulb, within which a serpent's thread twists. Figures adjacent to the image appear to hold objects resembling cables or supports. This interpretation may seem fantastic, but it has made the relief famous far beyond academic circles. The question remains, is this a complex mythological symbol or a reflection of practical knowledge lost over time? Numerous other artifacts, sometimes linked to lost technologies, also exist. For instance, various museums house perfectly crafted stone vessels from the era of the Old Kingdom. Their surfaces are so smooth and their asymmetry so precise that they seem to have been made using a lathe. Official archaeology claims these items are the result of stoneworkers refining their skills over centuries. This stirs debate about where the line lies between the Egyptians' real technologies and our fantasies of ancient knowledge. Archaeologists tend to favor explanations rooted in hard work and experience. However, mysterious images and artifacts lead many to ponder whether some knowledge could have been lost or concealed. Thus, perceptions of secret knowledge in Egypt intertwine several levels. The first level includes real achievements we don't fully understand yet: precise stoneworking, the art of mummification, temple planning, and pyramid orientation. The second level involves legends like the Hall of Knowledge, which may never be confirmed but persist in intrigue. The third level encompasses controversial images, such as the Dendera lamp, which can serve as symbols or evidence that Egyptians possess deeper knowledge than we assume. That when secret knowledge of Egypt comes up, many envision priests with special rituals and recipes. However, some of this knowledge can be gleaned not only from texts but also from archaeological finds, including mummies, temples, and accounts from Greek authors. Egyptian medicine holds a unique place in this context. Papyrus scrolls survive, detailing methods for treating wounds, burns, and fractures. They contain instructions for applying splints, recipes for ointments, and recommendations for surgeries. Yet, even more information comes from analyzing the mummies themselves. Studies using modern techniques have shown that Egyptians mastered not just embalming, but also a fairly advanced medicine. Some mummies display evidence of surgeries, amputations, and trepanations. There are also mummies with healed fractures, indicating that people continue to live after treatment. The composition of embalming mixtures used on bodies remains a mystery. Analyses reveal that rare oils and resins, sourced from far-off places including the Mediterranean coast and even Asia, were used. Some of these substances had antiseptic properties, preserving tissues for millennia. Modern scientists still can't recreate all the formulas. The general process of organ removal, treatment with natron, and wrapping is known, but exact proportions and secret ingredients remain lost. This creates a feeling that the priests held secret recipes passed down orally. Thus, the theme of lost technologies emerges. Sometimes this means not fantastical machines, but practices honed over centuries that vanish with civilization. For example, the technique for perfectly fitting stone blocks or methods for working solid rock. We see the results but don't know what tools the craftsmen used. Similarly, in mummification, the results are impressive, yet the details of the process remain unclear. These aren't necessarily high technologies as we understand them, but knowledge we've lost. Nevertheless, the question remains open. Did Egyptians possess technologies beyond their level, or is that just our impression of their works? Official archaeology leans toward the latter, yet the sense of mystery persists. Egypt's influence extends far beyond its borders. To the ancient Greeks, Egypt symbolized wisdom. Herodotus described Egyptian customs and religious practices, emphasizing their antiquity. According to legend, Pythagoras spent years in Egypt studying secret sciences with priests. Later philosophers like Plato referred to Egyptian traditions. Egyptians passed on not just images of gods and myths, but also ideas about the soul and its fate after death. The concept of judgment of the soul and trials after death has clear parallels in both cultures. Not only philosophy, but also Greece's religious mysteries, like those at Eleusis, shared traits with Egyptian rites. Secret knowledge, accessible only to initiates and symbols of rebirth after death, existed there too. One could argue that many of these ideas filtered into the Greek world through Egypt and later became part of Western spiritual tradition. Thus, Egyptian medicine, lost technologies, and influence on the Greeks represent three sides of the same coin. Egypt was a source of practical knowledge that helped heal and preserve the body. It held skills, some of which we can no longer reproduce, and it served as a teacher for other civilizations, offering ideas about the soul, the afterlife, and the structure of the world. This place has become a symbol of mysteries and treasures still awaiting discovery. The valley lies on the west bank of the Nile, opposite the historic area, and served as a burial ground for pharaohs from the 18th to the 20th dynasties. The choice of rock-cut tombs over pyramids stemmed from practical considerations. Despite their grandeur, pyramids attracted robbers, and protecting rich tombs under heavy stones proved impossible. Hence, during the New Kingdom, a decision was made to create secret tombs carved into the cliffs of desert valleys. From the outside, they appeared inconspicuous, merely an entrance into a mountain, but inside were long corridors and burial halls adorned with texts and images. Today, over 60 tombs are known in the Valley of the Kings, with Tutankhamun's tomb standing out, discovered by an archaeologist in 1922. This discovery was a true sensation, but it remains a mystery why the tomb of the young king stayed nearly intact while many others were looted in antiquity. This raises questions about how many more burials are hidden within these cliffs. Modern technology confirms that the valley may hold more than we know. Ground-penetrating radars detect anomalies underground that might indicate new voids. For years, debates have swirled around Tutankhamun's tomb about whether an additional chamber is hidden nearby. If such finds occur, they could become the most significant archaeological discovery of our time. Even well-known tombs brim with enigmas. Some have side passages leading to sealed rooms yet to be explored. Why have they remained sealed? Are they backup storage, secret burials, or simply rooms prepared but never used? There are more questions than answers. The Valley of the Queens nearby is also intriguing. This is where the wives and children of pharaohs were buried. Around 10 tombs are known, many adorned with frescoes as impressive as those in the Valley of the Kings. The tomb of Nefertari, Ramses II's wife, particularly stands out, with walls painted with scenes from the Book of the Dead so vividly that it feels like the artists just finished their work. This tomb is considered one of the most beautiful in Egypt, offering insight into the rich world of religious imagery of that era. The mysteries don't end with the tombs. Just recently, archaeologists uncovered the so-called Golden Parade Avenue, a road over 3 kilometers long, paved with stone slabs, connecting the temples of Luxor and Karnak. This avenue was used to transport statues of gods during festive processions. Hundreds of priests, musicians, and dancers participated in these parades, with crowds lining the road to witness the sacred event. The avenue remained buried under sand and debris for millennia and was only discovered in the 21st century. Now it can be seen almost as it was during ancient Egyptians' time. For us, it's not just an archaeological find, but a chance to understand what religious festivals looked like and how they united the entire city. The Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens represent not only burial sites, but also entire complexes of knowledge about the life and beliefs of Egyptians. They show that tombs were not merely burial places, but unique books where walls narrated myths and rituals. The Golden Processional Alley reminds us that Egypt thrived on more than death. It celebrated life, allowing everyone to feel the presence of gods. Yet, we know that much remains undiscovered. Hidden tombs lie beneath the earth, and sealed doors could hold new mysteries. Egypt seems to deliberately keep parts of its secrets, revealing them gradually. Abydos is one of the oldest and most revered sanctuaries in Egypt. Ancient Egyptians believed that the burial place of Osiris was located here, making it a pilgrimage center. Even those who couldn't afford a burial near Abydos sought to leave a symbolic stela or vessel behind, ensuring a piece of their memory stayed in this sacred space. Archaeologists have found hundreds of memorial tablets inscribed with the names of ordinary Egyptians who believed that a connection to Abydos would bring their souls closer to Osiris and offer protection. However, the city is shrouded in mystery. In the Temple of Seti I, reliefs exist that have sparked much debate today. One beam shows strange outlines resembling a helicopter, tank, and even a submarine to modern eyes. These images are real, and photos of these symbols have spread globally. Proponents of alternative theories see this as evidence of advanced technology or ancient aliens. Egyptologists offer a simpler explanation. These figures arose from overlapping inscriptions. Initially, one text was carved into the stone, and then a new text was placed on top. Over time, parts of both old and new signs eroded. This left peculiar shapes that modern viewers interpret as technological outlines. The scientific explanation seems convincing, but the unusual symbols still captivate the imagination. Equally enigmatic is Osirion, located near the Temple of Seti I. This underground structure differs significantly from typical Egyptian architecture. It consists of massive granite blocks, each weighing dozens of tons. Inside, there's a rectangular hall with columns, part of which remains constantly filled with water since the building extends deep underground. Its style doesn't resemble the fine workmanship of Egyptian temples at all. It more closely resembles megalithic structures from other regions. Thus, some researchers suggest that Osirion predates the Temple of Seti I and that the temple was built above this ancient sanctuary. The purpose of Osirion remains unclear. It may have been a symbolic underground lake linked to the myth of Osiris's death and rebirth. The water inside could represent the primordial chaos from which life emerges. Some believe special rituals for initiated priests took place here. In any case, Osirion stands apart from other Egyptian constructions, remaining one of the most mysterious finds. If Abydos was primarily associated with Osiris, another important religious center was linked to Isis. This is Philae Island, located upstream on the Nile. Here stood one of the main temples of the goddess, remaining active for a long time, even after Egypt lost its independence. The cult of Isis proved extraordinarily resilient. She evolved from being an Egyptian goddess into a symbol of maternal care and magical power, recognized by many cultures. During the Hellenistic and Roman periods, her worship spread far beyond Egypt. Temples to Isis were built in Greece, Italy, and Asia Minor. In Rome, she was venerated as a universal goddess. Philae Island became the last stronghold of her cult, continuing its practices even after Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. Throughout the 4th and 5th centuries CE, followers of the cult continued to perform rituals in honor of Isis, despite prohibitions. The priests stubbornly refused to close the temple, and it took several generations for the cult to be fully eradicated. This makes the temple at Philae a unique monument, preserving ancient Egyptian religion in its purest form. In modern times, the Philae temple complex remains enveloped in an aura of mystery. It was relocated in the 20th century due to dam construction that flooded the island, but even in its new location, it retains a sacred spirit. The reliefs, columns, and sanctuaries allow us to imagine how prayers in honor of the goddess echoed here centuries ago, offering hope and protection to millions. Abydos and Philae represent two poles of Egyptian religion. Abydos, the ancient city, is tied to Osiris and concepts of the afterlife, surrounded by legends and mysterious structures. Philae, a later site, became the center of Isis's cult, continuing to exist despite shifts in eras and religions. These two places demonstrate that Egypt was a land where the divine and human intertwined for millennia, and mystery remained a crucial aspect of faith. The project dedicated to pyramid formations began in the mid-2010s. This international initiative brought together Egyptian scholars and experts from France, Japan, and Canada to investigate pyramids using methods that allow viewing inside without excavations. Previously, archaeologists relied solely on traditional digs and studying open passages, but since the pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid of Khufu, are too valuable, new interventions into their structure would be unacceptable. Therefore, researchers needed non-invasive technologies. They applied several methods: infrared thermography to identify abnormal heat zones on the pyramid surface, and laser three-dimensional scanning to create detailed models of their external appearance. The main tool of the research became muon tomography, based on particles formed in the atmosphere when cosmic rays collide with air molecules. These particles penetrate earth and stone, losing some energy in the process. By placing detectors inside the pyramid, researchers can monitor the flow of muons, allowing them to detect internal voids. The results were astonishing. In 2017, a massive void was reported within the Great Pyramid of Khufu, dubbed the Great Void. It is comparable in size to the pyramid's largest gallery, but has no passages. Scientists propose various hypotheses about its purpose, ranging from a relieving chamber to part of a ritual complex. Other anomalous spaces were also discovered, potentially hidden chambers or shafts, but they remain unexplored. These findings represent a true breakthrough, as they confirm that undiscovered spaces exist within the pyramid, despite previous assumptions that it was fully studied. Researchers proceed cautiously to avoid damaging the monument. For further investigations, increasingly precise methods are being applied, allowing for more knowledge in the future without destroying the pyramid. The project demonstrated that even world-renowned architectural monuments in Egypt continue to keep their secrets. The Great Pyramid of Khufu remains not only a symbol of antiquity, but also a subject of modern research that unveils new horizons.